And not that we're trying to prove the skeptics wrong, but that's maybe a good, something for thought for people is we all dream. Most people dream. So that's one way things are coming through to all of us. Hey everyone, welcome to RealLaurenLive. I've got Beau Maxwell with me. How are you doing, Beau?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, I'm super excited to chat with you today. So Beau is the founder of Sage Method, which we'll talk about later. She can, tell us all about what that means and how she helps people. She's a spiritual coach, a medium, an author, and she helps people kind of tap into their intuition within. We all have it, but it's just tricky sometimes in this fast-paced world to take the time to really get familiar with that for some of us. So we'll focus a lot on intuition today. But first, do you mind giving a little background on yourself, like who you are and kind of how you discovered that you had these intuitive gifts?
Not at all. Don't mind at all. I think that my background it plays perfectly in the role that I've come down here to do, because up until the age of 32, I was an absolute complete skeptic. Psychics were frauds. It wasn't real. I have a maths degree from college. It was a very odd shift, but my grandmother passed away. She was in Minnesota. I was currently in New Hampshire at the time. And within an hour or two, she showed up in my living room, and it really, because the only thing, exactly, it's a pause moment still to this day, because the only thing I had in my mind at that time was like horror movies. And, so I was alone. She showed up. She was about 70% solid. And it was in front of me too. It wasn't off to the side. So there was no way around doubting it. Mm-hmm. And it frightened me the first time. But then I started to communicate with her. I started to reach out to people in the community that I knew. There was this wonderful Tai Chi instructor. I said, "Hey, can you help me?" He was like, "Sure." And people just started to assist me in, really tapping into this concept. A couple months later, I had enough proof under my belt that I knew I couldn't turn back.
Yeah.
And I became a professional medium. And then from there, I started teaching people how to open their intuition, because I got to tell you, Lauren, if I can do it, anyone can.
Mm-hmm. That's why I actually love talking to people that are like more science-based or mathematic, like skeptic. I've had doctors on who are, had near-death experiences and they were completely skeptical, and then it changed them. So that's what's so cool to see it play out in people's lives. And that's incredible that your grandmother came to visit you. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, she was a hoot. She was really a cheeky kind of lady. And I look back, she showed up, she was standing sideways. She turned and looked at me. She winked and smiled and then disappeared.
Gosh.
Like she knew.
Yeah.
She knew.
Perfect. Yeah.
She was like, I'm going to scare the pants off this little girl.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So have you seen her come through, throughout the years? Does she still come to visit?
Yeah, absolutely. And at first, so that happened, and it was really big and very visual. But I have to tell you, it took months after that for me to see something again or hear something again. It didn't just turn on.
Sure. It
was something that I really had to sit down and focus and learn why intuition works, how it flows, what's going on. Because, math, science people, we got to understand the whole thing.
Right.
And for a month, it was a feeling. I knew she was around in certain times, or I could smell her, or I would feel this rush, but I couldn't visually see her. It took a few months to get to that point. When I did finally see her, I was really excited. I look back now and I know that I finally saw her because I was taking big steps into my spiritual life. And then shortly after that, I was in a grocery store and I saw 3 living people in an aisle, and then turned around and then turned back, and there was deceased people with them. And
oh my gosh.
So I ran out, got into my car, sat down. So my grandmother was in the passenger seat, which she always was in spirit form, now that I was visually being able to connect with her. And I remember looking at her saying, "What was that?" And she's like, "Well, what did you expect?" And I was like, "I expected you and me to just hang out for the rest of my life."
Yeah.
And that was it. That's what I thought this was about. But that's when I started to learn that I was supposed to do something with it.
Okay. That's wild. Yeah. It's interesting. Everyone has different experiences. I've talked to a ton of mediums personally for readings on the show. Some can see like fairies or, deceased people, ancestors, their spirit guides, ETs, like everyone has like something different. So that's wild that the grocery store, oh my gosh. So really quickly, not to spend too much time on it, but just it's fascinating for people that are like, I believe in it, but I also like to analyze it. These spirits are able to come in and out of different dimensions, right? Like, I mean, they're obviously visiting Earth, but they're not really here as a human being, like biologically anymore. So like they just shift into different dimensions. Like that's wild.
Well, I dove really deep into spirituality, connection, intuition, all of that to really understand it. And one of the things that fascinated me the most was that all of this material existence that we have, this agreed upon reality that we're all in, is actually contained within everything else. So it's not like when somebody passes, they go somewhere else. They just shed the material component. So they're still right there.
Okay.
And there's no there and here.
Sure.
We use those terms because it's easy for us to understand when somebody passes away, they cross over to the other side. So for me, I say the other side or Earth, and then the in-between is the place that, people transition through. But in reality, it's all in the same place. So there's really no distance or time linearly on the other side. So they're here. They're just missing that material component.
Wow. And then only, some people can see them, which is fascinating too. Or, like sometimes they talk about like ghosts, how certain souls or beings might be more trapped because of something traumatic. And so they are showing up more than others maybe. So it's really interesting. And I've heard that too, right? Like, we only use time and location because we're humans and it helps us function here. But we're all existing in multi-dimension and times and realities all at the same time, which is like so hard for our human brain to even understand. But thank you for explaining that because, for people like me that haven't seen like another spirit, like that's really cool to kind of understand it more.
Yeah. And the way that I explain it that helps is that we have 3 bodies. We have the spiritual body, which is the spirit, physical body, it's the material world. And then we have something called the programming body, which is our mind on linear time. So we come down here to experience linear time. So when somebody passes, they let go of the physical body. But as they're transitioning to the other side, they still have their programming body. They have that linear time. It's not until they cross over that they let go of the programming body, which is connected to fear and linear time and what's coming up. And I don't know what's going to happen next. Once they shed that, then they've crossed over to the other side. So those spirits that you're referencing that are, stuck or whatever, they're kind of half here, half there. And their programming mind is still attached to their spirit. So they're, they can manipulate the material world a little bit better.
Wow. That's wild. Thank you for dissecting this. This is so fun. I love it. So like if your grandmother is no longer here physically, as your grandmother, but she comes in and out. But let's say like reincarnation, like she's going to have another life here or somewhere else, but could she be living that life now, but still pop in as your grandmother here now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And linear time, like past lives, is very easy to understand. Like a beginning understanding of it is you pass and then you come back and then you pass and then you come back. But the reality of it is our higher self on the other side, think of it like a big ball of light. You take a chunk of that light out, throw it in a body, runs around, and then lets go of the body, and then it comes back to the higher self, right?
Gosh, that's
our higher self is not on linear time, which means all of our lives are, in essence, happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So when we do past life regressions, we're really just sort of going parallel into another energy, another life of ours, And so when a medium speaks with somebody on the other side or connects with a spirit, the true essence of it is you're talking to their higher self.
Yeah.
The information coming from the higher self is in the form that you would understand. So like if I did a reading for somebody, their grandmother would come through. It's really their grandmother's higher self, but they're going to speak in terms that person connects with.
Right, exactly. And I heard, I think it was David Wilcock saying, often when a spirit will come forward, like your grandmother, they kind of pick, like how did she come through? Did she come through older or was she younger?
She came through the way that I saw her last.
Yes. So that's interesting too, right? Because she could have come through at any point in her life, but she came through to really what you like, recognized most recently. So that's interesting too.
Yeah. I had a moment with her where, because there was so much learning. I mean, the learning curve was ginormous.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a moment with her. I saw her. It was exactly as I remembered her. I saw her again. I kept seeing her. One day I saw a spirit that was much more flowing, more younger, not the aged kind of, and a female, long blonde hair. And I was like, who are you? She's like, I'm your grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, no, you're not. And she said, okay, let's talk about this.
Younger.
And so when I finally was able to connect with a different imagery of her higher self, that's when I started to understand, all right,
that's really
it's not
cool.
just one at a time.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. That's so cool. So, I'm like, naturally, I'm like, I want to see that. But I've also, like, from my learnings, a lot of us, we have a veil when we're down here, and some of that's protection. Part of it, I think, is growing, like trying to get through that veil and reconnect to source and our higher self. But also, I think it's my perception. We may not be ready for it, right? So you said you were kind of scared the first time. Yeah, I think most of us would be a little frightened, but it could be really distracting for some of us in certain points in our life. So maybe that's a protection that is held over us. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some of us come down here to straight up have a human experience. And some of us come down here to work for the other side. And some of us come down here for a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. So I've always felt strongly that whatever someone's doing, they're playing the role. They're playing their role perfectly. Mm-hmm. So, because a lot of people say, well, do you want to turn skeptics, and prove it to skeptics? I'm just like, no, I don't. I was one. Yeah. Okay. And I went from a random Wednesday thinking that when I locked the door, it kept everything out, to the following night thinking, okay, there's more to this. So it can be very rattling for someone to experience something that beforehand was, ungraspable. It can be very rattling, and it shifts your perspective. I will say this though, I'd go through it again in a heartbeat. My life is so wonderful today compared to what it was. And I didn't even know that it was, not the best.
Right. Wow. But so now that you've gone through the process and you're comfortable, like, do you see things all the time, often?
Yeah. When it comes to the work that I do here, it took me a while to figure out really what that was. Mm-hmm. And in the human world, I love teaching people how to open up to this, because once you open up to your intuition, the access that you have for different things is incredible, and it makes your life a lot easier. But spiritually, my job is to help souls cross over that are stuck. So that work is really close to my heart, and 99% of it I do just in my day to day. Yeah. It's not really, anything more than that.
When you say stuck, you mean maybe people that keep coming back here, but they just can't seem to get out of like a karmic cycle or learn what they need to learn to, move on. Is that kind of what you mean?
More so the people that are past that haven't crossed over.
I see.
They're scared to cross over, or they're fighting the process. Okay. And it's my job to kind of, shake them a little bit loose from that thought process so they can continue on with their transition.
Wow. That's really cool. Okay. So let's shift this a little bit. So you're seeing things personally. But then how did you learn to help people? Like, let's say I come to you for reading, or somebody else, like, how do you learn to then can you access like my guides or see people around me, or are your guides telling you things that I need to know? Because it can go both ways.
It can. Everyone's intuition is different. And if someone takes something away from it, that will be it, is that your intuition is completely unique to you. I love this example, but I had a student years back who couldn't seem to get into the intuitive state, couldn't get into it. And then finally came up with just a whimsical idea of imagining a diorama from like third grade. You remember the shoebox?
Yeah.
Little, And so she imagined the shoebox, and all of a sudden it's like her intuition poured into that shoebox. And like she could see scenes. She described like my wedding to a T, all the way down to some interactions I had. I mean, it was really intense. But she's the only person I've ever met who had to create in her mind a little shoebox.
Yeah, but it worked for
information
her.
to come through. Right, exactly. So everyone's intuition is very different. Some people, it's their guides telling them, you know, what your guides want to say, or your loved ones. For me personally, I connect with people's guides and loved ones just, you know, in front of me. So it's a very visual experience for me. Yeah.
Wow. It's cool. We were talking before we started recording, and I told, you know, I want to focus on intuition today and help people. I want to do this for myself, like everybody, because I know we all have it within. It's just sometimes it feels blocked or stuck, or maybe it's not the right time. We don't have the tools, the knowledge, and that's why we have amazing people like you to talk to help us. But I feel like I had something similar to that shoebox thing. I was like meditating, and I saw this like tunnel vision. It was almost like curtains, like I was at a show. The stage was here and the curtains, and I could like see things playing out. Now I've only had that happen once. I've had things like that happen randomly, but then now I haven't had it for a while. So it's interesting how maybe like right now I have this like theory, because I'm pregnant, I have a little one. Like maybe right now I'm really supposed to be focused on this like physical time, and that would be really distracting for me. This is my theory. So
it's a great theory, actually.
Yeah, because like I was talking about, there's like this protection veil. Like it's just not my time right now, but I am so curious about it, and I do want to, whatever's right for me. I don't have to like see spirits necessarily, but I would love to have that intuitive feeling that would help so much in life, right? Like knowing what to do and how to do things, like just you get that answer coming through.
Yeah. I mean, we're constantly making decisions. We're constantly having to decide, do I do this or do I do that? And to have your intuition speaking clearly to you is huge. And you are spot on. My son just got married a couple months ago, and for like 3 weeks straight, I saw nothing. Because you were
supposed to be focused on that.
Yeah, I was way into the human. Way into the human. And you can be into the human for, you know, positive reasons or negative reasons, but it's countless times people have come to me and said, where did my intuition go? It was open. It was, okay, so what's going on right now? Well, I'm moving into a new home. That's a very, very human focus.
Yep.
So it's a teeter-totter.
It is.
You got to, you know, and when you're in the human, I mean, you're bringing life into this world. Love that. Just be in that.
Totally.
Right? Because part of us comes down here to have the human experience, to go on the roller coaster, to fall in love, to do all of that stuff. And the setting a stage, lots and lots of people set a stage for their intuition. The diorama as an example, but most of the students that can set a stage, and that's part of what I teach, is trying to help people figure out how theirs works. But most people, you can use your imagination to set a stage and then relax.
And then just see if stuff can come through. Right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. That would be my very first thing to tell you, knowing that that's happened for you before. I would say just create the stage, imagine the curtains opening up, and then just relax and stop using and see what happens.
Yeah. It's so wild how everyone I know it's repetitive, but just everyone has such different, because I talked to my mom the other day. This is wild. We both, right as we're about to fall asleep, we're really relaxed. We start just seeing these crazy detailed faces of random, I don't know who they are, both of us. I'm like, that's weird, because I've been seeing that too. So that's got to be something coming through. Yeah. When we're sleeping,
when we're falling asleep, waking up, we can consciously get messages, but when we're sleeping, we get a lot of messages as well. Yeah. And it's because we're out of our own way. You know, it's our left brain analytical, logical thought process that blocks most of our intuition.
And not that we're trying to prove the skeptics wrong, but that's maybe a good, something for thought for people is we all dream. Most people dream. So that's one way things are coming through to all of us. You know, and there's a lot of signs and different things that come through. So that's something to pay attention to as well.
Absolutely. And that's what happened to me as a skeptic. The first incident happened because I was on the phone when she passed away. So I was just in that process and I was so shook that she was able to come in. But the second she did that, Now I got to figure it out. So my left brain just went crazy.
Yeah.
What's going on? How could that be? And I was so analytical that it took me months to see her again.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's cool too when things come through. I feel like everyone's had maybe like one or two things in life. I shouldn't say that, not everyone, but like I've had like hummingbirds come through, but it's like, okay, that wasn't just, it was like staring at me the way that it darted straight up in the window was like staring straight at me when I was thinking about something spiritual, like things that happen like that you just, in my whole body just had this like sensation. I'm like, this is something, things like that just happen out of the blue. That's the best. You know, it's like a reminder there's so much more than we like realize. Like, I love that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Our guides are always there with us. We're watched over very strongly.
Yeah.
And so many people have different experiences. When I first came into this mediumship, it was back in like 2005, 2006, right around those times. And it wasn't as popular back then. So I had to explain to people when they asked me what I did, I explained it to them. And when I came across somebody that didn't believe in it, almost every single time they would tell me, well, I don't believe in that stuff. But I had this one time. Yeah. There's always the one time.
Most people have something. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. It's true. And what do we want to grab onto and what do we want to let go of?
Yeah, that's really cool. Super fun. Okay, so I want to make sure that we kind of talk about what we were planning to talk about, intuition. So, you know, people like you tell me, and I've read about it and I hear about it. We all have this ability, right, to tap into our intuition. We all have this gift, whether you're skeptic or not. Okay, great. Like, what do I do? How do I access this? How do I become comfortable with this? Like, what is your advice on intuition? Well,
I have a ridiculous amount of advice that I could go on for hours, but some of the key pieces, patience. Impatience blocks intuition, which is a kicker because we lose our patience wanting it to happen. But the biggest one I would say is to acknowledge and recognize your energetic body, your spiritual being every single day, even if it's for 30 seconds. It's not quantity. It's the repetitive. It's keeping it in front of you. When you keep your spiritual path in front of you, you get more and more access to it every single day. And that's so simple, right? But it's so big. And I tell people every morning, do GCP, ground, and then clear out energetically, and then put like a bubble around yourself. You know, GCP is ground, clear, protect. Put a bubble around yourself that is more like a filter. Yes. You know, I don't want to let in what I'm not supposed to carry, but please let in what's supposed to be on my path. This brings clarity and it brings an acknowledgement to your spiritual body. When you do that, then that teeter-totter tips back.
Yeah.
That would be my biggest piece of advice. Like if somebody had one tool, it would be GCP.
Okay. That's nice. And that's easy to remember. And it's easy for us to all do. When you say like your, you say energetic self or spiritual self?
The energetic body, the spiritual body.
Was that your higher self? Is it the same
higher
thing?
Self?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's been one thing I need to work more on I'd like to work on the grounding and the clearing more. Because, you know, we hold so much here on earth. Like, man, I feel like I've been holding so much, there's so much in the world collectively. And then we have our personal lives. Oh, yeah. And, I'd like to work on that more, but then that's one thing that, a medium really helped me with. It's that like white light of protection, like only love and light can get in. Like that really helps me with like anxiety and different things like that. That's been life-changing for me. I love that. But the grounding and the clearing, that's a nice combo.
My guide taught that to me very early on. And he was very, firm about saying, do it in that order. Grounding acknowledges your physical body. Clearing acknowledges your programming mind, your programming body. And then protecting acknowledges your energetic body, which our energetic body, spiritual body, depending on the term you use for it, spirit, extends outside of our physical body. Yeah. So when we have interactions with people, those interactions, the sounds, the visuals, hit our energetic body before they ever hit our senses. So this is why when somebody yells at us, and we feel like we want to react, back, because the anger is already in our energetic body before we ever hear the words. Wow. So when we do this grounding, we're saying to our physical body, I'm a participant here, right? I'm a participant here. The clearing clears off everyone's emotions and baggage that we've been picking up and carrying with us. And then that protection is a game changer, absolute game changer. Totally. I used to be very reactive. I am a Taurus, analytical, type A, right? You want to pick a fight with me? Fine. And I don't do that anymore, because if something does come at me that's heavy or negative, that's not on my path, it's going to stop right here. Yep. And I'm going to have a moment to go, okay, that's interesting. What's going on here? Yep. And let's say it's a parking issue and somebody's mad because you parked in their spot. You can then not only not get angry and not bring in their energy, but then say to them, I didn't see you. I am so like, and it's a much healthier, more balanced experience. Totally. For people. Yeah. And seriously, GCP takes 10 seconds.
Yeah. So can you, for people that may not really understand what that means, I kind of mentioned like a little visual or mantra, like, I protect in a white light, like that's a protection, but maybe people don't understand. A lot of people are familiar with the grounding and they might think, and there's different ways to do it, but literally like going out on the grass with your bare feet and grounding to the earth, that's one way to do it. But let's say you're waking up in the morning, you're in bed. Can you imagine yourself like connected to the earth with roots? Can you make up your own? Like, what do you mean by grounding, or just being within your own body?
I am a big believer that every spiritual tool or technique or meditation, all of these things are more powerful when you make them personal to you. So you find an element or something that is really, really deeply rooted with you. I know a woman who is passionate about her gardens. She imagines standing in her gardens. That's how she grounds. I know a powerhouse female lawyer that steel pillars come out of her legs and into the ground. Wow. She's so fierce. Yeah. I know people who do use the tree roots. I personally imagine like a rope tied around my waist and it shoots down into Mother Earth and it kind of pulls tight. Okay. So coming up with something creative like that, and then going into the clearing process, what do you love? Wind, water, fire, earth. Pick the one you love the most and imagine it going all the way through your body, clearing out what you're not supposed to carry anymore. Yep. And then put your bubble up. I love it. And like you said, with the only love and light, that bubble only allows in what's supposed to be on your path and keeps out what's not supposed to be on your path.
That's helpful for anybody. But then obviously if you're starting to receive stuff, I've been told too, like, some bad dudes and weird things can try to come in sometimes. So it's important to protect yourself, and ask for that protection, and asking only for the highest of good to come through, because you don't want to be necessarily dabbling in that other stuff. Talk about not being ready for it or being distracting.
Yeah. If you're not ready, don't dabble.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you do want to dabble, please do GCP first.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many houses I've cleaned up energetically from a Ouija board just for fun.
Man. That's real then.
Well, and the Ouija board is interesting because you would think it's not, because it's made by a corporation. It's just a board game, right? You would think it's not. But when you have the masses all on board with a belief structure, it becomes real.
Dude, that's crazy.
The veil at Halloween is thin because for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, that was the belief. And so we believe it, so it becomes true.
Right. And that's a proof of like manifestation or, like collective manifestation. That's belief energy where you put it. So that's interesting about the board. Whoa. So some weird stuff can come through for people and they need help clearing that out. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. I never touched one of those. I was like, those are kind of creepy. Okay. That's really great advice. So can you explain what Sage Method is? This is what you do. This is your earth gift to others. Like, what are you doing with Sage Method? What's the point? Like, a lot of it is helping people with their intuition, you said you help people cross over. Tell us about Sage Method. Sage
Method was an interesting thing that came up because that wasn't something that I thought about or pictured or, came up with myself necessarily. I met my first spiritual guide about a couple months into being open. And I worked with him for a couple of years on understanding all of this. How is the earth created? Like, how does all this work? How's intuition? And he was the one that walked me through a series of steps. And it was over a longer period of time. But when it was done, I was working as a professional intuitive. And my guide said to me one day, I need you to take everything that we've done in the last 2 years, package it up and give it to other people. And I was like, oh, okay. And he goes, because everyone can do this. And we need more people tapping into their intuition because things are going to be shifting in the next, 10, 20 years. Here we are, right? Yeah. And so that was really how it was born. I was able to take all of the tools because I had journaled everything that we had done. And then I had walked through all of it too. I took all the tools, put it together, put it in order. It ended up being a little bit of a formula. But in the end, when somebody takes the course, it's 7 weeks in length, they come out of the course understanding how their intuition uniquely works best for them. Understanding how the 5 senses are utilized by the 6th sense, and also understanding the importance of a decluttered existence and decluttering the stuff that we don't need. All of those things come through the course, and then people come out of the course. It's so fun to watch people graduate because these really fun experiments in the end. And they take the experience and they're like, I didn't think I could do that. And I'm like, yeah, everyone can.
Right.
That's the thing.
That's so cool.
Everyone can. We just get blocked.
Right. And, like everyone's heard the movie, like The Sixth Sense. Is that what you would describe though as intuition, or like your inner, like your kind of like, I don't know what the right word is, but your access to your higher self or the divine or like whatever else is supposed to come through?
Absolutely. The Sixth Sense is, well, first off, the movie was really good.
Yeah.
I will say that. That was one of my favorite movies, but I watched it a long time ago. But yeah, we have 6 senses, and our 6th sense speaks through the other 5. So when somebody says, I don't know how I knew, I just knew. Yep. It did come through one of the other 5 senses, but we don't have that awareness. So sometimes we have to sit with it and go, okay, well, what really happened in that moment? Oh, I think I did see something, or I think I did hear something. And the second you start to acknowledge that, all of a sudden your other 5 senses, it's almost like they get on board and go, okay, great. We're going to start, bringing this information through.
Yeah. That's really cool. Wow. Yeah. I love this. Why do we we're not really taught this though in society. We're taught to be skeptics, right? So, and like you said, X amount of years ago, this wasn't as common. There weren't as podcasts talking about this, and people are warming up. It's a shift, evolutionary or spiritual. It's really cool. So people are a little bit more open to it. Mediums are a lot more popular, even just healing through different methods like acupuncture, and people can have spiritual stuff. And that was some of my first, I saw chakra colors come through with acupuncture before I was into all this kind of stuff. Right. So it is happening more, and people are getting a little bit more on board with it. But it is frustrating when you have accepted or have had some of these experiences, but we live in a society that it's just it's like, oh, it's just woo woo. Right. Yeah. And that's probably part of our experience here, right? Is to sort through that, I guess, and kind of get through it.
Sort through it. And everyone has a different way of learning. And everyone is magnetically, attracted to different styles. And I tell people, it doesn't matter what path you're on. The Sage community has people all over the globe, all different walks of life, all different religions. Because it doesn't matter the path you pick. It just matters that you focus on your path, and we could fight over terms, but there's no point. Yeah. So it's about living your experience here, playing that role the way that it works for you. And so for some people, the woo-woo really works. The more colorful that they can make it and the more elaborate they can make it, the more closer it is to them, and the more they can connect. And then you have other people that it's woo-woo doesn't really, connect with me. Me personally, one of my favorite terms is no woo-woo, no guru. Like, this is you. Just let's figure you out here.
It is wild.
And some people, it's helpful if the teacher's in front. Some people, it's helpful if teacher's by their side. So everyone's very different.
It is interesting. I've had friends that are like, why would you? Because I had some readings where my ancestors were coming through and they're like, why would you want to know that? That's weird. Like, your grandma died. And I'm like, why wouldn't you? Like, I think it's fascinating, but and neither's right or wrong. We're all on different journeys. That's what I've really come to like learn and accept. And I think it's, I don't know. I love it so much and I want to know all those things. And so I think, again, I just try to speak for myself because I can't say like what the audience feels, but that would tell me like I am more ready for that in my life. And that doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else. Just I'm more ready for that. Right. And so we're all in different levels here. Probably how many times have we been here? What have we been through? Right. What are we dealing with? Are we more, like you said, you're more here just for the human experience. I feel like I'm here for a little bit of both.
Exactly.
Wouldn't
and if
you say
somebody's
that?
Here for both or they have a pull towards spirituality, I say start with this concept because this concept has opened up more people than not in the people that I've worked with. And it's the concept that everything we're trying to reach is not in the physical. Everything we're trying to see or hear or connect with, all of intuition is in source. Yeah. Source is not in the physical. So one tool that works so well is to defocus. Keep your eyes open. Well, some people it helps to close their eyes, but keeping your eyes open and allowing your gaze to just soften, disconnect from the agreed upon reality is one way that I like to say it. Now your focus, which is defocused, is on source. It's on everything in between. It's on the invisible. So when we see something out of the corner of our eye, here's the best.
You and I messaged about this. Yes. Let's talk about this. Okay.
Yes. When we see something out of the corner of our eye, like you have, we turn real quick and we say, oh, now I can't see it.
Right.
And the reason you can't see it when you turn is because your physical eyes are starting to scan the physical environment to find something. They're landing on walls and doors and tables and you're looking around. The reason you saw something out of the corner of your eye is because your peripheral is defocused.
Right. That makes sense.
So take 10 minutes a day. Whether it's in front of a candle, bowl of water, a patterned carpet, it doesn't matter. Sure. Stare at something and then pull your gaze back and just let go of looking at the solid. When you do that, you'll be looking at source. And that is where everything we're trying to access exists.
Okay. What do you mean defocus from the solid? So like, let's say you're outside looking at like a leaf or like a bush. You're looking at it. And then what do you mean defocus?
Pull your vision halfway between you and the leaf.
Okay. After you for a while. Yeah.
So
okay.
Pull your vision, just let it go blurry.
Yep.
Just, and with time, when you do this, you'll start to, it's kind of an unusual and cool feeling. And I remember when I first started feeling it as a medium myself, because that's how I can see others in coming through. Okay. If I'm really focused on a solid object, the rest of it fades away. So I have to defocus in order to see my guides or somebody else's. And the feeling will start to happen if you do this as a practice. You'll start to get this really unusual feeling that when you do defocus, it's almost as if the material objects around you kind of fall back and fade into the back. It's a very unusual feeling, but it just takes a little bit of practice.
Sure. That's really
the key is why can't I see? Because you're not looking in the right place.
Interesting. It's all about a perception. Yeah. So when we were chatting about setting up this thing and we mentioned something about eyes or like you're seeing things and it's like, it could be a vision. If you got floaters or something, like go to the eye doctor, right? But I'll randomly see like either like a black squiggle or like a flash, like white, like just on the peripheral vision, like it'll just randomly come through and it's weird. So I feel like it's not an eye issue because it's different. If it was an eye issue, I'd be seeing it in front of me too. Like it'd be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I always like to just cross that T, dot that I, make sure everyone's taking care of their health. But,
yeah, totally.
So
that's something. So what is that coming through? Just energy, or could it be like a little spirit or like? Who knows?
It could be it could be a spirit. It could be energy. It could be your guides. It could be, like psychics. When psychics tap in, they tap into an environment, and there's messages in the environment, things that have happened, things that are coming up. When you tap in, you're letting go of linear time. So this could be something, this could be a sign. It could be a message. It could be something that happened in the past. Wow. There's a lot of things. So when it happens again, if you can pause and just kind of let your eyes drop and let that, just defocus and see if more happens, you might open a door.
Yeah. And the other thing to this is like, I've been told by people like you that have this gift, helping people and can see things and access, but okay, great. You saw it, right? I saw that hummingbird and I knew it was something. I knew it. Yeah. I didn't only just see it. Some people see it and they don't think about it. I saw it. I felt it, but then I don't really know what the message is. And that's fine. Sometimes maybe I don't need to. It's just hey, spirit world's around. Cool. Whatever. Someone's saying hi to you. Or maybe then the next step is what was I thinking about at that time? So I can, figure out what was the sign, or like, there's a lot of patterns and synchronicities that come through at certain times, but there's messages with that, right? So decoding the message. So then I think that's something fun for me to kind of like maybe work on is I'm seeing these things, but I'm not knowing the meaning. And so maybe asking the universe or asking whatever I saw, like, what would you like me to know?
Yes. Yeah. My favorite question of all time when it comes to intuition and guides, what is it you want me to know?
Yeah.
Because I did this too, especially in the beginning. I wanted, once I realized this was real and I could access answers, I had a list. What are my kids going to do when they grow up? How much longer am I going to live in this house?
Yeah.
Like, I just all of a sudden wanted all this information. And my guide finally taught me the best way to get the most information is to give the other the floor, whether it's your guide or source or your higher self. Give them the floor. Let them tell you what's most important, and you will get the best guidance.
Wow. And maybe it's not right then when you ask, but it might come through later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's really cool. I'd like to work on that a little bit. Yeah. Here's all the people going to think I'm crazy if my friends listen to this. But I was telling somebody else on another episode, I saw, I think my first UFO above my house. And she was telling me, she's like, you can still ask. I'm like, what was it that you wanted to know? And I know it wasn't a plane or a satellite because it wasn't just going like this. Like went back and forth.
Oof.
And then as you look, my husband's obsessed with anything space and UFO. He's like, I want to see one all the time. And when you stop, when I was about to stop recording, you can see the craft or whatever it was fade out. So it's just this is the kind of stuff that I'm again, I'm just this Lauren at my house on my deck. I'm not trying to be all crazy and weird and get YouTube views or something. I literally saw something. I don't know what it was. So technically that would be an unidentified, right? My practical, skeptical mind. I'm just saying, I don't know what it was. But it felt like this is so weird. I've never seen anything like that. So I'm just sharing this example because people probably see stuff like this all the time and we just discount it. But that was something. But I'd like to know, why did I see that?
I'll tell you, to this day, I still see, feel, or hear things that don't necessarily connect to anything. It's took me a while to understand. Then when you open up that channel, that sense, your intuitive sense it's the same as it's the same as smelling, hearing. I mean, when I'm driving a car with the windows down across country and I go by a pasture full of cows and I smell something, I'm going to be like, why did I smell that? So when we open this channel and we start to feel more, some of it just is, acknowledgement and signs of us going along the way. But I got to tell you, I've wanted to figure out so many things why? And then it didn't really come into fruition other than it was a sign or
guidance or just energy or other beings just coming in and out and you're just seeing them, but it doesn't. Yeah. That's really cool. Cool. Well, before we close, I try to ask almost every guest, and I really would love your perception, and I'm sure you've gotten some guidance slash information from your guides. But you had mentioned it earlier just about like a lot of us are opening up, preparing us for what's going on in this world right now, right? So world's always been crazy. We know this. History, there's always been crazy stuff. But it seems right now that things are happening closer together, more frequently, on top of each other. It's a lot to take in. The media playing a huge role, social media, it's just insanity, okay? The human experience is wild right now, and it can be a lot. It can be hard to sort through and exist right now. It's just very stressful, but it can also, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of good stuff happening with some of this stuff crumbling, but what is your perception, and have you gotten anything that's come through that you can share with us just about like, what's happening and like what do we do with this as humans, like spiritual?
What's going on? Yeah. Are you kidding? Of course I sat down with my guides and said, seriously,
what's going on?
Hello.
Yeah.
Like, excuse, but in all seriousness, I'm completely on board with everything you just said. There's a lot of difficulty, but there's also a lot of beauty. And as hard as a lot of this is, and we're talking grief and scarcity, and I mean, there's just a lot of difficulties. This is a time where a couple of things are happening, according to my guides. It's a time where people are given the choice on how they want to connect to their source. Do they want to connect through another living person, or do they want a direct connection? So there's a lot of shifting in how people approach their spirituality. And part of that has been the mistrust issues that are coming out. And, you're seeing a lot of people following a lot of storylines and things happening. And this is their challenge, with the hopes that at some point they break free and say, all right, instead of listening to an outside storyline, I'm going to listen here. So people are really being pushed to the wall. It's like they're a little mouse and their tail's being held down by a big old thumb. And then they have to figure out how to get the thumb off. That's really what a lot of this is about. And the other piece as well is really deciding that you want to live differently. And a lot of people decided they wanted to live differently, but they were going to get to that soon or next year or, and then, a lot of us were forced into taking the leaps that we were a little scared to take. Now we have to take them.
Yeah.
Are we really
literally being forced
in this situation? Yeah. So it's almost like a forced fast forward of everyone's spiritual path.
Yeah. And that's
guides looking at each person going, what are you going to do? Come on. What are you going to do? Okay. Let's go. You could, and people are finding happiness and bliss, and they're finding that they're unique. And they're finding that they don't have to necessarily follow their personal programming that was given to them. Those are incredible things that can be difficult to navigate.
Totally.
But I got to tell you, when you let go and you get the other side of it, it's freedom and bliss.
Right. That's true. But it's uncomfortable when you've known it one way your whole life. Yes. And it's like we're doing it individually, but also collectively. The collective part is crazy and tricky because we want to fit into groups and have friends and participate in society. But I feel like all aspects of society are literally just like a shit show, excuse my language, right now. But it's forcing us to look at it. Schools, currency, farming, our supply chain, like viruses, healthcare, like everything at once. So it's almost like I've heard ideas that there's just so much energy like within like our universe, like it's just shifting and we're like on this crazy ride. Just I don't know. It's the request coming from really the other side and the spiritual transformation type thing is the request of asking people to show up for each other authentically. And when we see that now, notice how it feels very powerful. Whereas when we saw that 8 years ago,
well, we saw it.
Yeah.
No, there it is. Someone showed up for somebody. Today, when somebody shows up for another person authentically and through unconditional love, it has a lot more power behind it than it did before.
It's true. Especially when there's so many different viewpoints and tension. So even if you have a different viewpoint, but you can still show up for somebody. Whoa.
Yeah.
Because that's what unconditional. It's not because you agree with me, I'm going to like help you.
Yep. Exactly. That is the direction that the spiritual shift is taking.
Okay. So it's a good thing, but man, it's like
hard,
ruffling the feathers. Yeah. It's a wild time to be here, but this is why I love it, because there's people like you and there's podcast shows like mine and so many others where we can talk about this stuff and we can work together and help each other and sort through this, because we are humans, but we also are so much more than that. And yeah, it's a wild ride. So
it is.
Thank you for being here. Where can people find you and learn more about the Sage Method?
Well, I do want to say thank you for having me. I have been looking forward to connecting with you.
Thank you.
And this has been a great conversation. The Sage Method, thesagemethod.com is the easiest place to go. It has everything. There's a free course on GCP. There's a, free course on intuition. If people want to, step in a little bit, there's so much there. So I would say just go right to thesagemethod.com.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll put that in the show notes for sure. Everyone, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, because I'm going to go, I'm familiar with those terms, but it takes practice, and I want to start doing that more. I feel craving for that. I need that balance, especially just with what's going on in the world right now. So yeah, very cool. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.